Hare Krishna. So that was just one of the many visits that we had here in New Dwarka by His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And it's always been very blissful when he comes. I'll move this way so everybody can look at Srila Prabhupada instead of looking at me. I'll be here. That's much better. Okay, Jai. So these kind of situations are never the most blissful, because obviously when we're mourning for a very wonderful devotee, a Vaishnava, it's always very sad, because then we don't have that association anymore. So in Krishna consciousness, association is of the utmost importance. Prabhupada used to say, no matter what, do not leave the association of devotees, because only by that association will be able to remember Krishna. Without that association, very, very difficult, if not impossible. So when we don't have the association of a very exalted, wonderful devotee any longer, it makes things very bittersweet. Bitter because, we don't have the opportunity to increase our interaction and our exchanges in Krishna consciousness, which are very valuable. And very, very sweet because we know that this great soul has gone back to Krishna by his activity. That's how you tell a devotee, by their activity. So today we're going to hear some things about the activity of this wonderful devotee. And I think that it's very important for all of us to hear that. It's very good for the soul. It brings out a lot of emotion and brings out memories of loving exchanges, which is very important. And those loving exchanges is what really gives us the impetus to go on. You can just imagine if you were just, even though you had the deities here and you were just by yourself, no association, how long would we last? Not too long. It'd be very, very difficult. Immediately you'd go somewhere where you could have some exchanges. And even here, in this particular circumstance, we even dig deeper, and then we try to be very, let's say, choosy what our association is. So this Vaishnava etiquette, this Vaishnava association, it goes very deep, very deep. If you're very interested in certain aspects of Krishna consciousness, like if you're a pujari and you're doing pujari work, immediately you want to look for someone else that's doing pujari work. It'd be a natural inclination to want to go and see those individuals and really, churn the ocean of deity worship, all the aspects of it. And you would try to go into it as deeply as you possibly could to get the essence out of that, to get the nectar, that ruchi, that taste. And the association of another person, another devotee, increases that particular taste. It just automatically flourishes and increases. I remember that when being a new devotee, I was doing book distribution, and I always wanted to look for another devotee that was distributing books, because then we could sit down and we could just churn the ocean. I recall that when myself and my older brother joined Krishna consciousness, we would sit sometimes and just try to figure out, make a plan, make a strategy, how we were going to distribute more books, how we were going to accomplish this goal. And the more that we discussed it, the more that we became energized by that association. So this is a very important aspect of Krishna consciousness. So we're going to lose that association in this great soul. And I'm seeing as we go on in this movement, these great souls had a lot to offer in Krishna consciousness, a lot. It's just that thing that it's really, it nags you. Familiarity, breeds contempt. Now I'm not saying we're content, but it's just that familiarity. It just takes away that edge, and those are very difficult things. And then we realize down the road, well, geez, if I would have just taken advantage of it more, maybe it would have been better. So these kind of things should remind us. It should remind us how important it is to have this association. This is just not just a morning. We're actually trying to just churn that ocean more and more to get a deeper understanding, to go deep within the heart, to understand the importance of association. It's essential for our advancement and for our existence in Krishna consciousness. And then especially if you have a devotee like Bhakti True Maharaj, who was very close to Srila Prabhupada, we'll talk about that a little later. But we have some senior Vaishnavas here, and I'd like to ask them, maybe if we have the mic, the wireless, maybe we can ask, why don't we ask Druta Karma Prabhu? He can start us off and say a few things about Bhakti True Maharaj.
So in the Shastra it said Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Koi, that the importance of the association of devotees, even for a brief moment, Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hoy. And even by a moment's association with a great soul, an advanced devotee, one gets the highest benefit. One gets attraction for the process of devotional service. So I didn't have extensive personal association with Bhakti Charu Swami, but I'm grateful for whatever little association, personal association I did get. As a very junior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, as one of the disciples, like I said, a junior disciple like me who didn't have a lot of personal, actually none really, of personal one-on-one association with Srila Prabhupada. One of the ways that I've been able to get some idea of Srila Prabhupada's way of dealing with his disciples has been through the disciples of his, like Bhakti True Swami, who did have personal dealings with him and absorbed his mood and way of behaving with his disciples and others. So I've always found I've gotten a taste of that. Whenever he saw me, he would come and give his greetings and a hug. So in these personal dealings, I very much appreciated it. So of course I was always aware of him by reputation. I was aware he was a personal servant of Srila Prabhupada during his last days, that his service was very much appreciated by Srila Prabhupada, who gave him very quickly all the initiations, first, second, sannyas. And I was aware in subsequent years that he was taking on the responsibilities of being a follower of Srila Prabhupada by taking leadership responsibilities, by taking responsibilities in preaching, accepting disciples, writing, managing. I had the opportunity to see him performing his GBC duties and his temple project in Ujjain. I visited a couple of times and was able to see him there. Ujjain was the place of Krishna's guru, Sandipani Muni, and there was a Gurukula there. And as I'm feeling some separation from this great soul and remain very grateful for whatever association I did get. Bhakti True Swami Ki Jai.
I had the great opportunity of being with Bhakti True Swami. He was the servant of Srila Prabhupada in 1977 in August in Vrindavan. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was the secretary for Srila Prabhupada. I was the assistant to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, traveling with him and staying in India, in Vrindavan for 4 or 5 weeks. And Bhakti True Maharaj, although he came later, 1975-76, and as Drudakam Prabhu said, he was initiated first, second, and sannyas, I think all in the same, first and second, and then sannyas, which was unheard of. Unheard of. And we all wondered, who is this amazing person? We all had to wait at least 6 months, a year, whatever it was, everyone. And he was rapidly making advancement. Every day in Vrindavan, he was the close personal servant of Srila Prabhupada. We were there fanning and in the room sometimes, and he would come with a plate, and an empty plate, put the plate under Srila Prabhupada's chin, and try to force Srila Prabhupada to drink some doodh, some milk. Because Srila Prabhupada in those days, late August 1977, he, of course, because of the dropsy, the failure of kidney and liver, wasn't able to eat, and his weight was less than, I think, 50 kg, 105 pounds, 5'6". Not Srila Prabhupada's normal situation. So I watched as I was fanning, that he would pour the milk in Srila Prabhupada's mouth and catch whatever wouldn't go in the plate underneath. Personal, menial servant, Bhakti True Maharaj. And sometimes try to give Srila Prabhupada some crushed strawberries, some strawberries to munch. And I was appreciating, he's a sannyasi. He's now risen up the ranks of ISKCON, big devotee. But he's the personal, menial servant of Srila Prabhupada. And I was appreciating for that month of his association what a humble and menial servant of Srila Prabhupada that Bhakti True Maharaj was. Haribo.
Hare Krishna. So really on these occasions there's not enough time. We could speak for hours and hours. So I'll try to keep this short. Most of you know the peace formula verse 529 Bhagavad Gita. Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvalokamahidam. Suridam sarvabhutanam gyatomam shantam vishati. So, on several occasions, Prabhupada stressed that Suridam, that Krishna is saying that I am the dearest friend of all living entities. So if the master is friendly, then the servants have to be friendly. You can't claim to be a servant of Krishna and be unfriendly. It just doesn't go together. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was the epitome of a friendly devotee. Friendly to all his God brothers, friendly to everyone. He just had that mood of friendliness. And so that was the first thing I noted about him. He's just extremely friendly. As Surya said, even though he came after us chronologically, he rose up to the top ranks of ISKCON almost immediately. And it's a person like that could easily get proud and, who are all you, so-called senior devotees, I'm higher than you. No, he was very, very friendly to everybody. So in that friendly mood, I worked with him on his book, Ocean of Mercy. By the way, if you haven't seen on my Facebook page and on the Temple Facebook page and on the BBT Facebook page, we have made that book available. Everybody can download it for free, and you should read it if you have not yet read it, his personal autobiography. So a couple of years ago when I was working with him on that book, he invited me to stay in his quarters in the Conch building. So that was the first time we really associated. Well, not the first time. Usually whenever he would come to New Dwarka, through his disciples, he would express desire sometimes that he would want to cook something for us. Here again, here's, GBC, sannyasi, but he wants to cook. He doesn't just want to take service from others. He wants to serve his God brothers by cooking. So I would allow him to come to my place and cook. He liked Asian food. So he would make some Asian noodles or whatever he felt like making at that time. So on those occasions, we had some really good association. But in this particular time, a couple of years ago, when we were working on that Ocean of Mercy book, I stayed in his quarters so that we could have meetings practically every day. And I really got to observe how he related to his disciples, how he related to his God brothers, everything very close. He understood Prabhupada's mood when it came to prasadam. Prasadam is part of our culture. Krishna consciousness is a science and a culture. And prasadam is a big part of that culture. Prasadam means there should be quality and quantity. Prabhupada said that example from the very beginning. Even when he was very poor, he said, if there's one apple, you offer it, you cut it up, and everybody gets a slice. But generally speaking, you make enough prasadam so devotees can eat first, seconds, thirds, until they're full. You don't force devotees to become satisfied with just one, whatever. Make enough. So he had that mood. Bhakti Charu Maharaj had that mood. When he had a pizza party, there was more than enough pizza. You could eat 10 slices. You don't have to worry that there's not enough. So this is our culture. Prasadam should be quality and quantity. So devotees can eat to their heart's content. Everybody's body is different. He was a small-bodied Bengali. But a lot of these small-bodied Bengalis, they can eat like anything. That was my observation when I first went to Mayapur in 76. Us Westerners, you get one plate and okay. They could eat 10 mounds of rice and 2 pots of dal and, a stack of chapatis. Because everybody's mentality is different. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj knew that, and in his friendly mood, he would always make nice prasadam and share. So while I was there with him, he invited the entire GBC body, which means not only the members, but their wives or whoever, and he made sure there was enough, like 50 devotees sat down in his quarters up there, and course after course after course. So that was his mood, to make sure devotees are satisfied. Now, one of the tests of friendliness is that sometimes even if you have a friend, you may not agree on everything. So we had our minor disagreements, but we had one major disagreement. I'm not going to go into it, but that showed me what a great soul he was, because even with a major disagreement, he could still remain friendly and we could hang out and discuss in depth our differences. So this is another test. How friendly can you be when you don't agree with somebody? You see? And Prabhupada even said that. He said sometimes in the company of Vaishnavas, there's disagreements. Only time will tell. In other words, don't get so big that you think my way or the highway or, there is no other way but my way. That was not his mood. So as a senior, as a GBC, sannyasi, guru, still, if there was some disagreement, he was always willing to discuss and try to hash it out. Not that, get out of here, you don't agree with me, get out of here. Not like that. So those are the two things I really appreciated about him, his friendliness and his willingness to negotiate, to work out any problems that arose. Bhakti Charu Maharaj ki jai.
Vanchakopadirvascha Kripasinaveva Chapatitanam Pavane Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. I never had any personal or to speak of dealings with Bhakti Charu Maharaj. But I can sort of try and describe the experiences I had when we did meet in a few different places, like in Mayapur or Denver or Los Angeles. And that was that after exchanging pleasantries, immediately the conversation would go into association with devotees. How important it is to be good association, but to take the association of the Vaishnavas. So the first impression I got when I met him was that this is a kind, very compassionate Vaishnav. And then the conversation would invariably go off to discussing Srila Prabhupada. So my other impression was that he was such a surrendered servant to Srila Prabhupada and dedicated to spreading Krishna consciousness. And he would talk about his some of his personal dealings with Srila Prabhupada, but my impression was that this was such a kind Vaishnav, and he was so willing to listen and share his experiences and his realizations in serving Srila Prabhupada. So that's a great lesson for me, and I very much appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Bhakti Truth Swami Maharaj Ki Jai.
Bigopati Prabhu.
Tamal Krishna Maharaj at one point asked Srila Prabhupada, why are you bringing this devotee up so fast? You know, like Sarah was referring, a couple devotees referring. And Prabhupada said, because I could see purity, you cannot. That was Prabhupada's answer. So they say first impressions of a person are very lasting. And so I had a very good first impression of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. I was in Australia in 1978. And at that time, Bhavananda, then sannyasi, and GBCN Guru, brought Bhakti Charu Maharaj to Australia to check it out, so to speak. He'd never been there before. And I was running a vegetarian club at Sydney University at that time. So they asked me if he could come and be the guest speaker. I said, of course, yeah. So we were driving in the van, and you know, he's very humble, very friendly. He was the sannyasi, he was the special guest of honor, and you know, but he's asking me, oh, when did you become a devotee? How did you join? Like, you know, he's showing interest in me. It wasn't just that I was driving and he was sitting there working on something else, ignoring me. No, he was, you know, wanting to make friends, and that was nice. I appreciated that. And then he's asking me, so, you know, would you like to speak first, or would you like to speak after I speak? I said, no, Maharaj, I'll just introduce you and then you speak. And he said, no, you're senior, you should speak. You know, I said, no, Maharaj, it's okay. You know, like that. So very humble. You know, and then when we got there, I was very impressed. He was a natural public speaker. He carried himself with, like, he had an air of dignity, composure, poise, like that. And when he spoke, also the same thing came across. He's very polished, you know. He's just, and the audience, you know, the students responded like that. Had no difficulty in communicating. Actually, he was just naturally expert at that. And another quality that I learned about him as years went on was he was very grateful. I worked with different of his disciples. They were Sankirtan devotees, some of, you know, Chandrasekhar and a devotee named Krishnendu in New Zealand. And but he would always, and I just thought, well, he would always, when he met me, he would say, thank you so much for your service, for helping, encouraging this so-and-so Das so much. So I'm just assisting, But he would make it seem like I was doing the big thing, and so he's very grateful. And well, I'll miss him, of course. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
I'd like to ask Tadit to say a few words.
Bhakti True Maharaj was a very humble, sweet devotee, and often he didn't say a lot. He didn't say a lot when you're in the room. He would just listen to everyone else. I found a little thing that he spoke in a talk last year, and I'll read it to you. Our salvation lies in reestablishing our relationship with the Lord. The spark can regain its fiery quality only when it reunites with fire. We can eliminate all our worldly problems and regain our blissful constitutional position if we again reestablish our forgotten relationship with the Lord. And doing this is very easy. Love is the inherent quality of the soul. Love unites and hatred separates. So if we want to get united with the Lord, then we have to offer our love to Him. Love means action, and if we really want to express our love, then we need to work for the pleasure of the Lord. That is called Bhakti. I thought that was just a sweet little excerpt that showed his nature and his relationship with this whole process of Krishna consciousness. Okay.
Okay, is there any other Mataji here that would like to say something?
Hare Krishna. The first time when I start cooking in a DT kitchen, Sri Lalita Mataji, she told me, my Guru Maharaj coming, and he's very, very amazing cookers, and I would like to represent you to him. And when he came, it was after class, it was happening here in the front of deities and Prabhupada, and I get blessing, and every achievement of these devotees, it goes by blessing of other devotees who improve themselves in Krishna consciousness. I'm so happy and blissful by his blessing. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Anantarupa Prabhu here, and then we have Sri Lalita Dasi. They're disciples of His Holiness Bhakti True Maharaj. So maybe we should ask.
Okay, so it's hard to know what to say. A few of the devotees said that he would like to cook, but as the servant, we also saw that he would also go to the stores and personally pick out all of the things that he would use to cook. And he was so specific. I was driving him to the Japanese store that's next to Chase on Venice Boulevard, and suddenly he told me, call Hridayananda Goswami. So then I called, and they agreed to meet. So then he decided that he would cook lasagna for the meeting. So then, right on the spot, he knew exactly what he needed. So then we had to come back to Sprouts. And I think the Prabhu saw us at Sprouts, and he offered his obeisance in Sprouts. Prabhu, Maharaj was so embarrassed. He left everything and he said, I'll go sit in the car because everyone is watching. So then he told me, you go pay and I'll go sit in the car. But, we went to Sprouts, and then he picked out everything personally. He said that we need this, we need this. And then we came back home, and he realized that I did not have the tray to cook. So then he said, well, we have to go out and get the tray now. So then we went to Smart and Final and we got the tray. And then he made the sauce the previous night because he was giving class the next day, and the time was short. So then he planned everything so that everything would be cooked on time. He knew that he had to do this the previous day to make sure that everything was done on time. And then he told me that I should watch the lasagna and I should wait exactly 3 minutes. I had so many things to do that it slipped my mind. Then I opened the oven and it got burnt, and he was so angry. As his servant, it's his duty to chastise us because the guru is so particular about how things should be done for Krishna. So when the disciple is not attentive like that, then it's his duty to chastise, because we have to be so attentive when we offering something to Krishna. So then he chastised me very severely. So then, right there on the spot, he realized exactly what we needed to do. We needed to scrape the cheese off. He told me to go and get more cheese. We came back and we put it back into the oven. So like that. I just wanted to add to what the Vaishnav said about him liking to cook. I just wanted to expand on that a little bit and give some details as to what goes. Yeah.
Okay, we can probably do a couple of more. Anybody else like to say something?
Hare Krishna. My Guru Maharaj Giriraj Swami, he after when he was at GBC in Mauritius, and after all these zonal things collapsed, he started bringing different sannyasis to Mauritius, and one of them was Bhakti Charu Swami. And Archita Prabhu said that Krishna consciousness is science and culture. And we saw how both of them were personified in him. I was simply amazed to see that somebody like him, exists in this world, who is fully full of culture and at the same time very shastric, very knowledgeable. And he immediately started teaching us. We were very young, so he wanted us to learn the Chaturi Sloki from the Bhagavatam, and he personally went to the shop and bought us notebooks, small notebooks to write the verses and to learn the verses. And he was so particular, for the girls, he bought notebooks that were more fancier with flowers, and for the boys were more simple. And I was just so amazed, he's a sannyasi and he's so personal and particular in his services and in the gifts that he will buy for the devotees. And I also heard that when his disciples were getting married, especially the ladies, he will personally go and buy wedding saris for them. And he actually told my Guru Maharaj that when you become sannyasi, you renounce the world, but when you become a guru, you become a father again. And so, he actually taught us also different bhajans that he used to sing, glorifying Lord Chaitanya. And so I was very affected by his departure, because he played such a big role in our spiritual lives. And there's one offering that he wrote in 2012. When you read the last paragraph, you can see how he was feeling so much separation from Srila Prabhupada. He said that, he feels that he has done whatever Prabhupada wanted him to do. And he was begging Prabhupada to please call him back. He already called so many of his dear servants. Now he also wanted to go. So right from there, we can see that he was feeling so much separation deep in his heart from Srila Prabhupada, while also executing so many services for ISKCON. And and when I listened to his last lecture that he gave before leaving India, he was speaking about overcoming the fear of death. And then the first lecture he gave when he arrived in America was all about the final pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. So I could see that it was all arranged by Krishna, and he knew about it. And this coronavirus was just an excuse for him to be reunited with Srila Prabhupada. That's my little realizations that I have regarding the departure of Maharaj.
So one more, anyone? Okay, Rudra?
Alright, so sometimes we remember a devotee by their accomplishments. So whenever I think of Bhakti Charu Swami, I always remember the Abhay Charan series that he did, the video series that he made, and that was something that was nice because nobody had done anything like that, and we really weren't expecting someone to make more like a TV series about the life of Srila Prabhupada, but it was very nice. So when I think of him, I always relate that with him. And one little story I could say, a small little thing, but it like the devotees were talking about, his friendliness and kindness, and it was so evident. When I was a fairly new devotee, maybe a couple years in the movement, and we were doing Sankirtan out of Alachua, so we were at the Gainesville campus of the University of Florida, and Bhakti Charu Swami happened to be visiting our temple at that time. So he was there with us, and the Sankirtan devotees, the young Sankirtan devotees, were sitting around on a blanket on the lawn of the campus, and Maharaj was sitting with us. And he had a way of just we were all just pretty new devotees, but he had a way of making us all feel like we were on the same level with him practically. And he was such an exalted sannyasi and devotee already, but he made us feel like we were on the same level. And one little thing I always remember is about his friendliness. One of the devotees was Siddhavidya, who also left his body a little while ago, but he could be somewhat of an avadhuta sometimes, and he had applied his tilak a little haphazardly and real quickly, but Maharaj noticed it, and then he just looked at all of us. He had a smile on his face, and then he turned to Siddhavidya and said, I might have known as much. The older devotee can't put on his tilak properly. And then we all had a little laugh. It wasn't done in a way to make him feel bad, but it was just good-natured, and we all had a little laugh. So I always remember that. One of the Jai, Hare Krishna.
Bhakti Charu Maharaj ki jai. Okay, just a couple more things. So, from hearing all the devotees that spoke, you can see how important association is. I can see that there was a lot of things that devotees felt from Bhakti Charu Maharaj that were the same, but then there was always that extra little thing. And I had quite a bit of association with Maharaj through the years, especially when Tadit and I were living in Denver, and I was a temple president there. I was the president for about a year. And one day I got a phone call from a devotee, a temple president, I don't recall where, I think it was on the East Coast somewhere. And he said to me that, Savas, I have a little Indian sannyasi here, and he's thinking he'd like to come to Denver just to see, what's going on in Denver. So the first thing I said to this Prabhu, I said, does he speak English? Because in those days, our experiences with Indian sannyasis was that you could hardly, understand what they were saying. Their accent was so heavy that you just couldn't understand. And what I didn't know is that this devotee, he had me on speakerphone. And Maharaj was hearing everything I was saying. So it was kind of a joke between him and I for all these years. Whenever he'd see me, sometimes he'd say, Savas, I speak English. So it was a nice joke. It was an internal joke. So it was very, very sweet. We both got a real good laugh out of it. But what was really nice was when he came to Denver, he wanted to see what was going on. I guess he didn't see very many temples in America and how they were functioning, what was going on. Just like when I never went to India before, but when I did go, I really wanted to see what the temples were like. Are they the same? Everything the same? So he kind of like had that kind of mood, that feeling. And it was amazing. I never knew him. I never saw him before in my life. And he comes into Denver. All of a sudden, we're just like talking a mile a minute. I mean, it's like Maharaj, when you're with him, immediately you can just start talking. And what was really kind of good about Bhakti True Maharaj was that, although he was born in India, and I think he came out of Calcutta, but he was actually he was an international kind of person. I think in the beginning of his early years, he kind of took off from India, traveled through Europe, and really searching out Western culture. He was really interested in Western culture. So he traveled, and he got a lot of different kinds of association and became very knowledgeable. And he liked Western culture at that time. And only when he became very serious about Krishna, about finding out who he is, where he's from, then he went back to the motherland, India. And there he pursued his Krishna consciousness. But what was kind of nice being in Denver with him is that he had interaction with a lot of Western people. He was easy to get along with. We communicated really good. And I remember him and I were talking in his first visit. And he said, wow, you really got a nice car. We had a Volvo at that time. A Volvo that we leased for the temple. And he tells me, boy, that's a nice car. And I said, yeah, it's really good. We have Volvo because in the mountains, you need these kind of Volvo cars. He said, yeah, let's get in that car and let's go take a ride to the mountains. So, yeah, it was kind of neat. And then I was nervous at first and thinking, well, gee, what are we going to talk about? It's like a long haul. I mean, we literally drove for 4 or 5 hours. Maybe longer. I don't remember exactly. Could have been 6, 7 hours. I don't know. We left. Tariq would cook us we'd have a good breakfast. We'd get in that car and we'd take off, and come back later in the afternoon. But we would go through all the different roads up in the mountains of the Rocky Mountains, and it was like nonstop talking, association about everything, about Srila Prabhupada, about ISKCON, and feelings and desires and realizations. And you can imagine if you're sitting in a car right next to somebody, and I never even met him before. I mean, it was just one of those kind of situations. Then we did it again, and we'd come back, and Tariq would have a great meal for us, a big feast. And we'd eat this big feast, and then we did this for a couple of days, and finally Maharaj says, okay, I'm going to cook, because he said, Tariq really cooks really good. He was really very happy with her cooking. But he says, now I'm going to cook for you and her. So I said, okay. Well, I told Tariq, don't cook today. Maharaj is going to cook. So we get back to the temple, and I didn't know what to expect. So he goes into the kitchen, and he actually gets right into it, starts cooking. And I don't know what I was doing, kind of spacing out somewhere, I think. I don't know exactly. But I do remember he said, okay, it's ready. So he brought it out. And what it was like, I think it was like 2 things. Wasn't it? I think it was 2 things. I think it was the rice and asparagus spears. That's all it was. And I thought, oh my God. I thought I was going to get a whole, bitter melon and all kinds of stuff. Shooked. But he said, no, this is really good. This is Bengali style. So he put a mountain of rice on my plate like this, literally like that. And then he took about like a stick of butter. He cut the butter in half and put a little hole in my rice and put it right there. And it melted into the rice. And he said, this is really first class. So I just dug in and we started eating. And halfway through eating, we both started really laughing a lot. We were getting a little intoxicated, I think. And by the time we finished our rice with asparagus, we were laughing like anything. I practically was rolling on the ground. I couldn't believe it was it was just so much ecstasy. And it had nothing to do with anything except the fact that we were just really happy in Krishna consciousness. And he cooked this rice and we had this asparagus. The point being is association. Being with someone. That's the intoxication. And of course, prasadam, that helps a lot. But, I think that at one time, I experienced this another time with Suradas. We were competing in St. Louis and Denver. We'd always compete. If he'd win, I'd have to go to St. Louis. If we'd win, he'd have to come to Denver. So he'd come to our apartment and Tadit would cook up this huge feast. I mean, it was just like, it was just great prasadam. And I remember eating that, and we got so intoxicated. We'd be laughing for so long, like hour, 2 hours, just laughing. And everything about association. This is the point. It's that association. And Maharaj was really expert in association. He was really expert. He made you feel as if you were really, somebody important. And that is so rare. If you try to take a look around, how many people can you speak to that make you feel important, although you're not really that important. You just know you're not that important. But he actually made you feel that way. And I think that was one of his one of his more wonderful qualities. And he was expert at it. It came natural. I think when somebody's expert at something, it's kind of natural. It's in him. And so that was just part of his character. He really had that kind of loving nature and that interaction with devotees. It just automatically came out. But he was also very staunch. He was very strict. He would, if necessary, he would do what he had to do in order to straighten out a situation. So, Anantarupa, you've experienced that, right? We went over to your apartment and ate lunch several times. It was pretty good. So, I think that the sum and substance of what we're doing here is just trying to understand the importance of all these associations and what they mean to us and how they, what happens with our life after we meet these individuals. And when these kind of situations occur, we start remembering all those particular situations that we were in with that particular person, that devotee. And I think that's really the wonderfulness of it. I just wanted to read this little thing that I'm reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I came across this and I thought, wow, this is so beautiful. So I'll share it with you. It's from the Padma Purana, and Srila Prabhupada quotes this. Aradhanam sarvesham Vishnu aradhanam param tasmat parataram devi tadiyanam samarchanam. Translation. O Devi, the most exalted system of worship is the worship of Lord Vishnu. Greater than that is the worship of Tadiya, or anything belonging to Vishnu. So the most confidential servant, that's the end of the quote, but the most confidential servant of Krishna is the spiritual master, and all devotees of Vishnu are Tadiya. So I thought that was really amazing. The most dearmost spiritual master to Krishna, very important, but also the Vaishnavas. They're very, very dear to Krishna. So Krishna, Guru, Vaishnavas, and things used by them must be considered tadiya, and without a doubt worshipable by all living beings. So Maharaj was not only a bona fide spiritual master in ISKCON, but he was a Vaishnava on all respects. And today we're worshiping that individual on that principle of being a great Vaishnava. And it's the proper thing to do. So that's why we're together, worshiping this individual, this great soul. And Krishna loves that. Krishna wants to see that. So we're here doing this today in remembrance of him. And we should carry something from this whole ceremony with us throughout the day and throughout our life. That, all of us, we want to be known as good devotees, and we need to have examples. And that's why we'll miss Maharaj, because we won't have that example. And that's very difficult. But from this particular memorable situation here, we should take it from this, that look at all of us here that are so nicely thinking about Maharaj. And we should make it our life to be that way, to take something from that we heard today about his character and imbibe it, and then carry it on, take it and go with it. And that way, the devotees will be happy, Krishna will be happy, you'll be happy. I think that's very important. Okay? I think we went pretty good. Thank you very much. Bhakti Charu Maharaj ki jai.